A black limousine stopped in front of Lucia as she was window shopping. Lucia was stunned for a moment before she turned around and hurried away. Without waiting for the bodyguards, Jeff got out of the car. Lucia was frightened and ran blindly down the street. Then she realized that she should have run towards the office. Why was she running away instead? Could she seriously outrun Jeff? Not to mention his bodyguards who would follow after him. Eventually, Jeff grabbed Lucia. "Ah!" Lucia screamed as she was pushed into the alley beside the company. Lucia tried to run out again, but was blocked by Jeff. "Jeff, get out of my way!" Lucia screamed. Lucia did not have much strength in her body to begin with, so it was impossible for her to fight back. Jeff sneered and approached her. "You don't look too good. Do you want me to take a look at you? See if I can tell what's wrong?" Lucia backed off nervously. "I'm fine. I don't need you to look at me." "Really? I heard your relationship with Dalen advanced by leaps and bounds during my absence." Lucia didn't want to tell him anything about her new relationship with Dalen. She tried running in the opposite direction. However, she had only taken one step when she was caught. "Jeff, let me go!" Jeff pushed Lucia against the wall. The way he looked at her caused her to freeze. He asked coldly, "Why aren't you running anymore?" "Jeff, don't act recklessly. Don't forget you are friends with Dalen," Lucia said, trying not to panic. "I've already prepared to break all ties with Dalen in exchange for you," Jeff explained with an evil gleam in his eyes. "What did you say?" Lucia could not believe what she had heard. Her face was filled with astonishment. "Are you joking?" "Tell me, do you love Dalen?" Jeff's sinister smile widened. Lucia had yet to recover from her shock, but was once again irritated by this question, and she tried to push Jeff away again, but it was to no avail. "Jeff, calm down. I'm married." Lucia was furious. Having just dealt with Axel, now there was another one, Jeff. And it was obvious that Jeff was much more troublesome and difficult to deal with than Axel. "You still haven't answered my question." Jeff's words were filled with power. "Why should I answer your question?" Lucia asked defiantly. Jeff asked, "I'll ask again. Do you love Dalen?" Lucia was angered. "You're talking nonsense? Of course I do." "Do you like being with him, though?" Jeff asked. "Are you satisfied?" Lucia was about to go crazy. Was she supposed to tell Jeff about her and Dalen's private moments? What was there to say? So red-faced and angry, she yelled, "I really like it. I'm very satisfied, okay? Jeff, you must be crazy." Her arm was about to break from Jeff's grip. "What did you say? I'm crazy?" Jeff asked, a dangerous anger appearing on his face. Lucia looked at Jeff with both shock and caution. Wait, Jeff, I didn't say you're crazy. I'm joking. How can I say you're crazy?" Lucia quickly softened, laughing and coaxing him. Otherwise, if no one came to save her, what would he do to her? Lucia tried to still her trembling body. Lucia suppressed her flustered emotions and patted Jeff's shoulder lightly with her hand. Jeff said with a smile, "This is in broad daylight. This is not the time, all right? There's going to be a lot of time in the future, though." Lucia was dumbfounded. "In the future?" Jeff laughed. Lucia thought it would be better if he didn't laugh, though. It made her nervous. Right at this moment, a voice yelled from the alley opening, "What are you doing?" Lucia's body froze. She turned around and saw Cole, who was not far away, looking at them in shock. Lucia's hand was still on Jeff's shoulder. No matter how you looked at it, you could imply what was going on. "It's not what you think, Cole. Lucia immediately retracted her hand and pushed Jeff away. She ran in front of Cole. Cole, don't misunderstand. Listen to what I have to say from start to finish. Yes, tell him everything. Jeff walked over and put his hand on Lucia's shoulder again. Jeff, you're crazy. Lucia flung his hand away. Cole, don't listen to his nonsense. You don't have to explain it to me. That's your problem. Besides, you should worry about explaining it to Dalen. With that, Cole turned and left. Cole! Lucia called to him. Cole ignored her and ran off. Lucia closed her eyes. She had hurt Cole's heart, and she felt terrible. And it was all thanks to that idiot Jeff. Since you are so hungry, go eat something. I'm leaving, Jeff said as he left. Lucia was she could hardly believe her eyes. This person. Most importantly, how would she explain it to Cole? It was true that Jeff had pursued her from the beginning, but she couldn't tell that to Cole because she was afraid that he would be disappointed. Besides, Jeff was probably just bored and wanted to aggravate her. Who knew that Lucia's run-in with Jeff would turn into such an uncontrollable situation? When Lucia returned to the office, she did not see Cole. Did you see Cole anywhere? She asked her other assistant. I think he went to the washroom. Oh, thank you. Lucia pushed open the bathroom door and saw Cole standing in front of the mirror in a daze. Lucia hesitated for a moment before walking over, her head lowered just like someone who had done something wrong. She and Cole had entered university together after high school, and their grades were about the same. Ever since they met, they had been like two peas of the same pod, always hanging out together, saving each other's ass. Despite their fair share of highs and lows, their friendship always stood firm. Even if she wanted to do something dumb, Cole had always cooperated with her. To put it bluntly, even if she wanted to rob the bank, Cole would keep an eye out for her. Lucia even thought of that time when she jumped over the wall and knocked out the bride who was supposedly marrying Axel. She had stepped on Cole's shoulder to make it inside. Although the groom wasn't who she wanted in the end, it didn't matter. Cole helped her at every point in her life. This was the first time that such a negative tension existed between her and Cole. If you have something to say, just say it. Cole frowned. Are you hungry? Cole just growled, so Lucia continued. I know it's strange to ask you if you're hungry in the bathroom, but I really don't know what to say. Let me tell you, my heart is hurting and I'm in a bad mood right now because I put you in a bad mood. Lucia pursed her lips and looked at Cole. Then I'll just ask, what happened between you and Jeff? Cole turned to face her. Lucia felt a headache whenever she thought of Jeff. However, she still wanted to tell Cole every detail. I don't know what kind of crazy person he is. He has provoked me quite a few times already, and he always says weird, ambiguous threats. He likes you? Cole asked. There's no like in his eyes at all, okay? Lucia almost burst out laughing. Really? Really? There is no emotion in his eyes at all. I can guarantee that. Lucia pondered for a moment before continuing. As for what he wants to do with me, I'm not sure. Cole, we've been good friends for so many years. Don't tell me that you don't believe me. Lucia had a bitter look on her face. I want to believe you, but I have to look at the facts. You had your hand on his shoulder, and if he had been making unwanted passes at you, why didn't you tell me earlier? Why did you keep pushing me to keep pursuing my liking for him? Tell me, what should I think? Anger burned in Cole's heart. All I can say is that you shouldn't have seen what you saw, Lucia said. Cole frowned. Why? You'd have seen him get knocked out by my punch. I was about to bash him in the head. Lucia curled her hand into a fist. In that case, why didn't you tell me the truth earlier? Look, I've been telling you that I like Jeff. Were you just mocking me all this while? Cole asked. Lucia shook her head. Cole, I think Jeff went crazy for a moment. I think he's finished his job in the Middle East and there's nothing left for him to do. Who knows what kind of crazy person he is now to make such a scene? Lucia wished she could punch Jeff to death. You've always had your reasons, but I still don't understand. Just leave me alone. After Cole finished speaking, he immediately pushed open the door and left. Lucia knew the disappointment and sadness in Cole's heart, so she understood why he was angry. Therefore, she was willing to give Cole some time to calm down, but not too long. Lucia got angry when she thought of Jeff. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a large bruise on her upper arm. Was that from Jeff? She thought. That lunatic! How would she explain this to Dalen if he found out? Could she avoid it? That night in Lucia and Dalen's room, Lucia was beginning a negotiation. How about you let me rest for 2 days a week in the future? Lucia said. Why? Dalen raised his eyebrows in surprise. The office has a weekend. Why can't I have 2 days of rest? Lucia protested with a flushed face. No, Dalen said matter-of-factly. Lucia panicked in her heart and jumped up in excitement. How about this? Lucia laughed dryly as she leaned in toward Dalen, using her most powerful tool of persuasion. Dalen leaned back lazily on the headboard as she came closer. After a few minutes, Dalen saw the bruise on Lucia's arm. His eyes suddenly widened. How did you get that bruise on your arm? He asked as he grasped her arm to examine it more closely. Weren't you the one who did it? Lucia was still in a daze and it took a while for her brain to clear. There's no way that was from me. Dalen was always sure to be careful with Lucia's body. Then I must have accidentally hit it somewhere, Lucia said, trying her best to look innocent. Where? Dalen persisted. Maybe on the corner of the desk. Lucia tried her best to look normal, but her face was growing red. Dalen put his hand on Lucia's shoulder and said, Lucia, are you lying to me? What makes you think I'm lying to you? I'm speaking the truth, she argued. Really? Then why is your heart beating faster? No matter how she tried to cover it up on the surface, she forgot that it was impossible for her to remain calm under Dalen's oppressive gaze. Dalen could detect the change in Lucia's heartbeat. He knew that she was lying. Do you want to tell me now or later? Dalen's mood turned cold as he threatened Lucia. Lucia did not dare to make Dalen wait. It was Jeff, Lucia said honestly. When she saw Dalen's cold gaze, she immediately explained. He pinched my arm. Why did he pinch you? Dalen's eyes turned sharp. I don't know. As soon as Lucia finished speaking, Dalen got off the bed and walked back and forth. His expression was terrible. Lucia sat up from the bed and pulled the blanket over herself. Looking at Dalen's furious expression, she felt a little scared. Dalen, are you angry? Lucia asked. If I hadn't seen it, would you have told me? Dalen looked at her coldly. I thought it was nothing, so... What did you think it was? Dalen asked. I didn't mean that. Lucia had become dull, and her head hurt from arguing. But she didn't know what to say. Why was she trying to rationalize Jeff's behavior? Didn't she want Dalen to settle the score with Jeff? Dalen came and stood in front of her. He lifted her face and said with a dangerous look in his eyes, "Now I'm going to take care of this." Lucia looked at Dalen quietly. The bitterness in her heart did not dissipate until Dalen walked out of the closet after putting on his clothes. She saw Dalen take out his phone and asked him, "Are you going out?" "I'll be back in an hour." With that, Dalen glanced at her and left. Lucia sat blankly on the bed. He would be back in an hour. Lucia collapsed weakly onto the bed. She knew what Jeff had done to her would anger Dalen, but she did not think it would be so serious. The anger emanating from Dalen was still making her tremble. Dalen strode through the halls of the mansion toward the front door. "Mr. Patrick, why are you going out at such a late hour?" John asked. Dalen had just entered the hall and was chewing on a cigarette when he heard John's question and looked over. John was so frightened at Dalen's stare that he immediately lowered his head. He only dared to look up after he heard the door shut. "You should not forget your place," Edward said as he appeared behind John. John froze for a moment. With a look of regret on his face, he replied, "I know, but if Mr. Patrick went out, what about the young madame? Did they have a fight? I wonder how upset Mrs. Patrick would be." "Even if it's true, you shouldn't ask where Mr. Patrick goes," Edward explained. Although John knew Edward was right, he still felt unsettled. Finally, he said, "You really are merciless." Then he lowered his head and left in a hurry. Edward watched him leave and frowned. In the private dining box, Jeff was lazily sitting on the sofa and smoking. He was out with some of his colleagues and a few female models accompanying him. They were all having fun until the door to the private room was pushed open. Dalen's tall figure walked in. He swept his stern eyes across the crowd and said in a low voice, "Everyone but Jeff, get out." Jeff's eyes shifted. It seemed like Dalen was here to cause trouble. The other seated men and women naturally knew who Dalen was, but most had never met him in person. Privately, they had all discussed how much they hated Dalen, but now that they were standing face to face with him, they were shocked by his intimidating presence. They all left in silence, and Jeff was alone in the room. "I say, you..." Jeff suddenly stopped talking and he quickly dodged to the side as a gunshot rang out. A hole appeared in the wall behind where Jeff was sitting. Dalen held a sleek black handgun. The muzzle seemed to give off a terrifying power as Dalen continued shooting. "Dalen, are you crazy?" Jeff growled sinisterly. "You're dodging pretty fast." Dalen's face seemed calm under the beam of light projected on them. "You actually shot me for a woman?" Jeff's expression was ugly. "It's good that you know how serious I am." Dalen once again pointed his gun at Jeff and asked, "Do you want to try again? How fast will you be this time?" "Don't take it so seriously. Nothing happened." Jeff reached out his hand as if that would stop Dalen from shooting. "I was just joking." "Well, I'm not joking," Dalen said coldly. "No, you're trying to kill me over nothing," Jeff sneered. "But what's the point of using a gun?" After saying that, Jeff took out his gun and threw it far away. "Let's use our fists. Then we will truly know who is best." Dalen threw down his gun and raised his fists. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Suddenly, Dalen and Jeff were like two wolves as they jumped towards each other. Their fists were like iron as they punched and grappled. The two of them lunged and jumped, using all their strength in each attack. They didn't look like friends, but enemies. Dalen raised the tea table with one hand and threw it towards Jeff, but Jeff did not dodge. His eyes were vicious as he punched at the glass surface of the table. With a bang, the glass shattered. Then Jeff punched Dalen's face through the empty frame. Dalen quickly turned his face away and grabbed Jeff's wrist with one hand. The pain was worse than punching glass. Jeff managed to surprise Dalen by clawing at his face and pinning him between the broken table and the sofa. Jeff looked down at Dalen from above and sneered, "Are you ready to give up?" "Guess." Dalen snarled as ruthlessness flashed across his face. Dalen shifted his weight and kicked Jeff off of him. Dalen stood up and looked coldly at Jeff, who also stood up from the ground. Their clothes were torn and their faces were bloody. Dalen began walking towards Jeff. There was nowhere for Jeff to retreat. He once again faced Dalen's incoming fist. Outside the room, the two groups of bodyguards stared at each other, listening to the loud banging sounds coming from inside the room. It didn't take long before the noises stopped and it became quiet. When they looked inside the box again, Jeff's face was swollen and his whole body seemed to be bruised. On the contrary, Dalen was still basically the same as before. Jeff lay paralyzed on the sofa, his face tense as he winced in pain with every breath. Clearly, Jeff had lost. Dalen looked down at him coldly. Jeff took a deep breath and said, "Let me tell you a story. A teenager was playing in the mountains when he suddenly encountered a tiger. He was so scared that he immediately pulled out his bow and shot. He wasn't good with a bow, so he shot the arrow straight into a nearby rock. As he ran away, he thought he must be extremely strong to shoot an arrow into a rock. On the second day, he once again shot an arrow at the stone, but the arrow was unable to pierce into the stone no matter how hard he tried. So don't be too complacent. You only won by a fluke because you were furious." Dalen looked at him emotionlessly. His eyes were full of revenge. "I will remember what happened today, so don't ever touch my wife again." "Don't worry, I don't like her much anyways," Jeff sneered. Dalen didn't say anything as he turned around and left the room. Jeff's bodyguards walked into the room and saw Jeff sitting on the sofa. The box was pretty much destroyed. Jeff left the room in shame and went to his car that was outside the bar waiting, its black body bathed in darkness. Jeff got in the car and it drove away from the bar. As they turned a corner, Jeff heard a sudden bang. The driver braked sharply and Jeff slammed into the seat in front of him. Jeff's face immediately darkened. "Can't you drive?" "I'm so sorry, sir. It seems like I've hit someone," the driver said shakily. "Go deal with it," Jeff shouted coldly. The wound at the corner of his mouth split open again, and he yelped in pain and anger. Dalen had truly dealt him a ruthless blow. The driver got out of the car, and the girl who fell to the ground stood up. "Little girl, are you all right?" the driver asked. "Nope." The girl looked up, revealing her face. Her face was as pale as the moon in the sky, and even in the dark of night one could still see her face. When she smiled, she revealed a set of rotten teeth. And that wasn't to even mention her weird hairstyle. It was like a ball tangled on top of her head. However, the driver still had a strong mental fortitude. His heart was in turmoil, but he maintained a calm expression on the surface. "It's good that you're not injured." After saying that, the driver got into the car. He didn't want to look at her ever again. The girl stepped back on her scooter and skidded past it, looking toward the window for just a moment. Then the car drove away. The girl turned her head and her eyes never left the back of the car. The night wind tousled her hair. Suddenly, the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile, revealing her black teeth. True to his word, Dalen appeared back in the room within an hour. Lucia was already sound asleep. She had finally managed to escape Dalen's lust, so of course she had to take advantage of the opportunity and go to sleep. What's more, Dalen was so annoyed about what happened between her and Jeff. She didn't like Jeff, and Jeff didn't like her either. He's just a bored idiot. Nothing more. The next morning, Lucia felt amazing. Every cell in her body felt refreshed. Lucia closed her eyes and stretched. Then she realized something was wrong. She turned around, saw Dalen sleeping, and shouted, "Ah!" Dalen frowned. "What are you shouting for?" "Dalen, what happened to your face?" Lucia asked in disbelief. Dalen's face was full of wounds, big and small. They were all untreated and there were bloodstains on the pillow. Dalen looked at her coldly. "What do you think?" It can't be?" Lucia was frightened. I didn't scratch your face in my sleep, did I?" Dalen got off the bed and went straight to the bathroom. "Dalen, don't clean up your face by yourself." Before Lucia could finish her words, the door swung shut, and she was interrupted with a bang sound. Lucia sighed, feeling guilty. Had she done it to express her anger? No, she would never do that. The sound of water came from the bathroom. Lucia got off the bed and walked to the bathroom door barefooted. She leaned her face against the door and asked, "Dalen, can you hear me?" He didn't answer. There was only the sound of water. "Dalen, I know you can definitely hear me. Are you still angry about what happened yesterday? It was really just a misunderstanding, and I thought about it and decided that Jeff had a purpose in doing so. He must have done that on purpose so that Cole would see it. You know that Cole likes Jeff. As a result, Cole had misunderstood how horrible Jeff really is. He had to see that Jeff is a treacherous and shameless person. Jeff only wanted to achieve his own goals, but he forgot about my friendship with Cole. Now he's made Cole angry at me. I'm very innocent in all of this," Lucia said as she scratched the door with her finger. Still, there was only the sound of water. Lucia sighed deeply. A silent person is the most terrible thing, isn't it? The door opened and Dalen appeared in front of her with a gloomy look on his face. "What do you want to tell me?" Lucia immediately broke into a smile. "I want to tell you that you need to treat the injury on your face properly, or else—" Lucia was cut off as Dalen pulled her into the bathroom. Lucia staggered as Dalen pulled her into the bathroom. Shocked, the door slammed behind her. "I don't want to wash up," Lucia argued, but to no avail. Dalen held her against the wall. Lucia stood straight and looked at Dalen, who had an imposing manner. This scene was too familiar. Wasn't it just 2 days ago? "What are you thinking about?" Dalen asked. "Dalen, what are you going to do?" Her voice was trembling. "What do you think?" "Can't tell." Dalen looked at Lucia with a gaze that said, "You know." Lucia nodded. "You want to rest?" he asked. "Yes." Lucia nodded vigorously. "You still want to run away from under me?" Dalen chuckled. Lucia was stunned. What did she look like? Lucia's face reddened as she hugged herself tightly. "It's too late," Dalen said. "No, I want to take a break from this," Lucia shouted anxiously. "I can wait." Lucia was glad that she had already gotten some rest for the night, because now Dalen seemed to have gotten even more needy. Lucia couldn't take it anymore. When Lucia woke up the next morning, it was already time for dinner. She had slept the whole day. Her whole body felt like it was on the verge of collapsing. The bed sunk down next to her, and strong arms wrapped around her. Lucia didn't need to turn her head to know who it was. "You're awake? Are you hungry?" Dalen immediately asked when he felt the person in his arms move. Lucia didn't say anything. She was passively resisting. Are you angry? Dalen's low and hoarse voice sounded beside Lucia's ear. Lucia was so angry that she covered her head with the blanket. She didn't want to hear what Dalen had to say. At the sound of his voice, she felt pain all over her body. Or do we want to skip food? Dalen asked suggestively. Lucia, who was still covered by the blanket, suddenly froze. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. She immediately lifted the blanket away and with a flushed face, she angrily said, Dalen, how dare you treat me like that? Then do you want to eat? Dalen grabbed her chin, ignoring the anger on her face. To him, there was only loveliness. He could not see anything else. Lucia pouted her lips and glared at him. After weighing her options, she unwillingly spoke up. Let's eat. Dalen directly kissed her long and deep before letting go and getting off the bed. With Dalen gone, Lucia laid on the bed with nothing to do. If she knew that she wouldn't be able to escape, she might as well die early. How did she end up with such a terrifying person like Dalen? As she was being fed by Dalen, Lucia was fiddling with her phone without even raising her eyes. When the spoon was placed in front of her, she naturally opened her mouth. Dalen's eyes narrowed slightly. He saw something on the screen and remained silent, stuffing more of Lucia's favorite pasta into her mouth. After they were done eating, Lucia showed Dalen the screen of her phone. Hey, I need a new phone. This one's broken. Okay, but you need to pay for it. Dalen's expression was dark and unfathomable. Why? Lucia was stunned. Do you want to use my money? Yes, please, Lucia said. I don't like money, Dalen responded. What's the point of making so much money if you don't like it? You can have as much as you want, Dalen said indifferently. Lucia's face heated up, and then she looked at Dalen. I don't want to pay back in other ways, though. Can't I rest for a day? Tonight? Depends. Lucia's face twitched as she threw her phone to the side and sunk down in the bed. Not hungry anymore? Dalen asked. No! Lucia roared with a depressed expression on her face. Dalen had fed her quite a lot already, so he stood up and went to the living room to eat his own food. Lucia lifted her face from the pillow and didn't see Dalen. Lucia didn't want to be seen by Dalen when it was time for them to go to bed. She was afraid that something might go wrong. Dalen came back to bed and wrapped his arms around her again. However, when she deliberately moved to the side, she felt Dalen's arm tighten. Then she was imprisoned again. Lucia, don't keep moving. Lucia was so hot that she started sweating. When did I move? If I say you moved, then you moved, Dalen whispered. Lucia cursed silently. Yes, yes, whatever you say is right. You are such a tyrant. Halfway through the night, Lucia felt her body heat up. Lucia, who was extremely tired, struggled between her sleep and her body. Lucia hated the 2 days off. In the future, she had to make it clear that the company was not allowed to have a weekend. She would just work overtime. Dalen's car stopped in front of the company's entrance. Lucia got out of the car angrily. She didn't even say goodbye to Dalen. She wanted to let him know that she was angry. Dalen was in an excellent mood as he looked at Lucia's angry expression. This was the first time in his life he had coaxed a girl. As soon as Lucia walked into the secretary's office, she said, From now on, I have to work overtime every weekend. Huh? Her assistant had been a secretary for so many years, but this was the first time he was confused. Is there a problem? Absolutely not. Okay then, don't forget to arrange everything for me. With that, Lucia turned and left. The assistant thought to himself, Mrs. Patrick usually doesn't have much to do, so why make her work overtime? Of course, he did not ask these questions. Since Mrs. Patrick said so, then he would do it. When Lucia walked into the office, she saw that Cole was already working. In the past, Cole would definitely tease her when he saw her. Now, he simply said, "Mrs. Patrick, good morning." Lucia frowned at Cole. How awkward. He was still angry. She was very late and lunch was already in an hour. Lucia sat down in the chair and turned on the computer. When it was time to start, she turned to Cole, who was working at his desk, and asked hesitantly, "What would you like to eat for lunch, Cole? I'll treat you to a meal." "Thank you, Mrs. Patrick. No need." Cole rejected her expressionlessly. "Cole, don't be like this. It's so strange." Cole gritted his teeth. "I'm angry, so don't ask me about anything other than work. If you keep bothering me, I'll resign." All right. I won't say any more." Lucia was convinced. Jeff had ruined her friendship with Cole. Thinking of that idiot Jeff, Lucia really wanted to smash him to death with a brick. Since she couldn't talk to Cole, Lucia was insanely bored in the office. Cole had a job that kept him busy, but she didn't. Lucia was sighing when she saw a new door in her office. What was going on? Why was there a door there? Lucia walked over, opened the door, and found that it was a bedroom. Lucia walked in and out, looking confused. She asked Cole, "Cole, what's going on? Why is there a bedroom? This is official business. Do you know anything about this?" Cole walked over. "Mrs. Patrick, this is the resting room that Mr. Patrick has prepared for you." But Lucia didn't smile. Instead, she felt terrified. What were Dalen's intentions? Lucia walked into the bedroom and looked again at the huge bed. There was everything inside. A closet, bathroom, rug. It was like a suite. Lucia suddenly had a bad premonition. The cell phone on her desk rang. Lucia walked over and picked up the phone. When she saw the missed call, she refused to call back. There was no need to talk to Dalen. She had already said that if he dared to touch her, she would get angry. Dalen didn't take her seriously, so Lucia wanted to let Dalen know that she wasn't joking. She was truly angry, and she let the phone ring again, refusing to answer. The phone rang again, and again 10 minutes later. Lucia still did not answer. Then a text message popped up. Lucia stretched out her neck and looked. It was from Dalen, but she didn't even open it. Her phone rang again. Lucia did not even glance at it as she played on her laptop. Cole, who was sitting at his desk, looked over at Lucia. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Can't you mute your phone if you don't want to pick up the call?" But who was it? Could it be Dalen? Were the two of them fighting again? Was it because of Jeff? Forget it. Who cares? Lucia deserved to be punished. But then, why isn't Lucia answering the phone when she's being punished? It should be Lucia trying to get Dalen to talk to her, not the other way around, right? Cole didn't understand. There was a loud knock on Lucia's office door. "Come in." Lucia looked up from the computer. Then she saw Mark walk in. "Do you have something for me to do?" "Finally," Lucia said. Mark cleared his throat and said, "Mrs. Patrick, I am here to pass on a message from Mr. Patrick." "What do you mean?" Lucia was stunned. "If you don't answer his next call, you'll be locked in the mansion forever. That's what he said." Mark looked at her apologetically. Lucia slapped the table and stood up, fuming. "He's gone too far. If he locks me in the mansion, I'll divorce him. Tell him that." Cole heard Lucia's yelling and was shocked. So they were in a fight. Mark put on a troubled expression. Then he raised the phone in his hand and put it against Lucia's face. Lucia glared angrily at Mark and wanted to strangle him. "What did you just say? Say that again." Dalen's voice came from the phone. Lucia's attitude immediately changed as she smiled. "I didn't say anything. You must have heard wrong." Mark and Cole exchanged a frustrated glance. "Why aren't you answering your phone? Pick up now," Dalen said, and then he ended the call. Immediately, Lucia's cell phone rang on the table. Lucia felt as though she was about to collapse. Mark turned around and walked out of the office. Cole closed the door and left Lucia alone to face the menacing Dalen. Lucia answered after a few rings and headed into the lounge. "What are you doing?" "Why weren't you answering the phone?" Dalen asked. "I'm angry, can't you tell?" Lucia asked confidently. "Lucia, don't be angry, huh?" Dalen coaxed in a low voice. Lucia's anger was slightly appeased, but she was still unhappy. "What do you mean by setting up a bedroom in my office?" "It's so you can rest," Dalen said innocently. "Is it that simple?" Lucia asked in disbelief. "Why? What do you want to use it for?" Dalen's low and hoarse voice sounded. Lucia immediately said, "It's best if I only use it to rest." "I'll come early in the afternoon to pick you up, and we'll go out somewhere special," Dalen said. "Huh? Where to?" "You'll know when the time comes." After the call ended, Lucia was still wondering where Dalen would take her. If only she could guess what Dalen was thinking. He was such an unfathomable person. Lucia started yawning after lunch, so she entered the bedroom and fell asleep. After all, in order to deal with Dalen, she needed to have enough sleep. Lucia didn't know how long she slept, but as she gradually came to consciousness, she shuddered. Lucia turned her head and found herself staring straight into Dalen's dark eyes. "You're awake?" Dalen asked. "Ah." Lucia struggled and asked, "When did you arrive?" "I've been here for a while." Lucia tried to remember. She didn't notice him coming in the room at all. She had slept so deeply. However, she still didn't want to get up. She stretched out under the blanket and yawned. Her eyes watered. Everything seemed too bright, and she squinted. Dalen hugged her, but Lucia was so frightened that she immediately bounced up and ran away in panic, even accusing, "You said you wouldn't! Not today!" "Now you seem awake," Dalen teased. Lucia was exasperated. Could Dalen be any worse? The two of them left the company, got into the car, and drove off. Lucia asked curiously, "Dalen, where are you taking me to? Can you tell me about it first?" "No." Lucia rolled her eyes but didn't ask any more questions. If he wanted to surprise her, she didn't mind the wait. An hour later, Lucia and Dalen made it to the hot springs. Lucia stood gloomily on the edge, looking down at Dalen, who was soaking in the spring. He looked at her lazily. "You coming down? Sorry I didn't warn you about bringing a swimsuit," Dalen said in a sexy tone. "No worries." Lucia pulled off the towel on her body. "Luckily, I had one in my bag." When Dalen saw Lucia's swimsuit, his eyes darkened. Lucia's heart skipped a beat, and she almost turned and ran away. "Dalen, you promised," Lucia reminded him. "I make a lot of promises," Dalen shrugged. Lucia then lifted her foot and walked into the pool. She squatted down next to the edge and submerged most of her body in the water. Suddenly, she felt comfortable and relaxed. "Come here," Dalen coaxed. "I am here." After Lucia finished her sentence, Dalen's expression looked like it could freeze the water in the hot spring. She rolled her eyes and walked towards Dalen. When she was next to Dalen, Lucia asked, Isn't it nice? All hot and relaxing. No. Oh, is there any other way you'd prefer the heat? Dalen grinned like Lucia had just played right into his hand. He reached out and pulled her close to him, leaning down and kissing her deeply. Something like that, he whispered when they finally broke apart. There was hardly any space between them, and Lucia had a thought. She said, "The closest distance between the two hearts is not when you're facing each other, but when you're back to back. Dalen, I'm right, yeah?" Dalen looked puzzled. Lucia refused to give up. Just think about it. The back is definitely thinner than the chest, so wouldn't standing back to back bring hearts closer? Dalen still didn't say anything. Why aren't you saying something? Lucia frowned. Finally, Dalen sighed. If two people are back to back, would their hearts be on the same side? Dalen could not help but chuckle. Lucia thought about it. Wouldn't they be on the same side? My heart would be on the left if you turn around. Then she realized they really wouldn't be on the same side. Lucia was shocked by her own stupidity. Her face instantly flushed red. You figured it out? Dalen asked. I was empty-headed just now. Lucia's eyes darted around as she looked up at the sky. How did you ever get through school? Dalen teased. The corner of Lucia's mouth twitched as she said unhappily, Didn't you do your research before marrying me? I've never been good in school. I'm smart enough. I don't need a smart wife, Dalen said as a matter of fact. You must have learned nothing in school either. Fighting, smoking, drinking, flirting, and I could go on. If you failed an examination, I bet you used your family's money to buy your grades and get out of trouble, Lucia said accusingly. You can ask around if you like. No one would tell you anything, Dalen replied with a smirk. Naturally, Lucia couldn't compare to him. Her school grades were abysmal. But Dalen didn't need a smart wife. If she hadn't inadvertently saved Dalen's mother that day, she would have never met Dalen. Lucia quickly changed the topic. I want to eat. Dalen reached for a bowl of fruit near the edge of the pool. Lucia instinctively opened her mouth and shoved the fruit into it, but when she bit down, the juice filled her mouth. Lucia's face reddened as she shyly closed her eyes and tried to quickly swallow all the juice before it spilled out of her mouth. She didn't succeed. She stared at Dalen helplessly. What kind of fruit is that? Let me show you how to eat it, he said, grabbing one from the bowl. Nope. Lucia grabbed another fruit and stuffed it into her mouth. Don't eat too much fruit. We can get a delicious dinner after soaking in the water for a while, Dalen said, leaning back and taking a small bite of his own fruit. All right. Lucia faced the sky, with her mouth still chewing on the unfinished fruit. Thinking of something, she asked, Dalen, will we go back to the mansion after eating? No need, he said. What? Where will we sleep? Lucia asked in surprise. We can sleep wherever you want. Why did Lucia feel like this was too good to be true? No, she had to disrupt Dalen's plans. Did the craft, Lucia was still a little dazed. Leaning on the windowsill, she watched as the helicopter slowly ascended, and the ground slowly moved farther away. Aren't we going too high? We're way above the mountain. Did you rent this? Lucia turned around and addressed the indifferent Dalen. Dalen turned around and looked at her. Why would I need to rent this? What do you mean? This helicopter is yours? Lucia asked, puzzled. Dalen hugged her waist and pressed her against his firm chest, saying, It's ours. Then how come I didn't know we had it? Lucia was stunned. I can give you anything you want, Dalen said, ignoring her question. Lucia became extremely excited. If she had a helicopter, wouldn't she be able to go anywhere? Dalen, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. After that, I can go wherever I want. No. Why? Lucia's excitement was doused with a bucket of cold water. There needs to be a pilot, Dalen explained. Then I want to learn how to fly, okay? Lucia said. No. Why? We already have a pilot. Lucia was not convinced. If you have a pilot, does that mean you don't know how to fly? I can be your pilot if you like. Lucia was elated when she heard this. She and Dalen could go anywhere. Are you happy? Dalen's eyes were filled with a dangerous luster. Lucia didn't pay attention and nodded her head vigorously. I'm happy. That's good, Dalen said, bringing her closer to him and letting his hands wander on her body. Lucia was so shocked that she blinked her eyes and didn't struggle. As soon as he reached her belt, she began to struggle. Dalen let go and gazed at Lucia's flustered appearance with interest. I'll kick you out of this helicopter if you don't stop right now. Lucia bared her teeth to scare him. Then she turned around, looking at the scenery outside. Dalen leaned lazily against the seat with a smile in his eyes. After getting off the helicopter, Lucia saw a tent close by. She asked in surprise, Dalen, when did you get this set up? Over dinner. Lucia walked around the tent, unzipped the zipper, and slipped inside. She found that the beds had already been made. Ha! Lucia rolled onto the blanket, feeling quite comfortable. Also, the tent was very insulated, so she didn't have to worry about the cold. There were also lanterns and a change of clothes. Dalen followed her into the tent. Satisfied? Dalen asked Lucia. This is my first time sleeping in a tent. Thinking about this, Lucia remembered a horror movie she once watched that was set in the mountains. She turned around and asked Dalen, Do you think that there might be a killer hiding on this mountain? Will he sneak up on us when we're asleep? What if I need to pee in the middle of the night and then the murderer attacks me? What do you think? I would just kill him first, Dalen said simply. Lucia glared at him, then pounced towards him to try and scare him. Dalen only grunted and reached for her, but Lucia quickly let go and moved to the side. When it was time to go to bed, Lucia was unable to sleep. She thought about where she was, right in the middle of the mountains. The forest was everywhere, and it was quite fresh. Dalen, who was lying by her side, knew that Lucia wasn't sleeping either, so he got up. Dalen, what are you doing? Lucia asked. I'm going out for some air, he said. Lucia thought about the murderer she mentioned and quickly sat up. She tugged on Dalen's shirt and said, I'll go too. You want to come with me? Dalen looked at how Lucia's hand was holding on to his. Are you scared? He asked. Lucia proudly raised her chin. I'm not afraid. I'm just worried that you won't be safe alone in the forest. Think about it. Your status is much higher than mine. If anything happens, it'll be a huge loss, won't it? No one can hurt me. Don't worry. As Dalen said this, he let go of her hand and went out. Lucia was alone in the tent, and she wanted to curse. Besides, what if he led the murderer back to her? She hugged her knees into her chest. There shouldn't be any wolves on this mountain, right? What if there were wolves? Lucia couldn't think about it anymore. If she continued to think about it, her entire body would tremble. Really, why did she have to talk about murderers? She was trying to scare Dalen, but she actually scared herself. Besides, she knew Dalen wasn't easily frightened. A murderer would probably be scared of Dalen. Lucia waited in the tent nervously, but after waiting for a while, there was still no sign of Dalen. Where did he run off to? Didn't he just go out for a quick walk around? He couldn't have gone far, could he? Besides, Dalen could deal with a murderer, right? The more Lucia thought about it, the more frightened she became. She couldn't help but shout, "Dylan, are you out there? Where did you go? Why did you need to go so far?" Just as she finished yelling, the zipper opened and Dylan came in. Only then did Lucia's heart return to normal and her face relaxed. "Where did you run off to?" Now that she knew Dylan was safe, she was angry. "What? Were you scared?" The corner of Dylan's mouth curved into an evil smile. Lucia insisted, "Of course I wasn't afraid. I want the bad guys to take you away." Dylan looked at her slightly flushed face and approached her. "What is it?" Lucia asked. Her face turned even redder. Dylan's black eyes were so deep that she couldn't see them. Lucia's heart tightened. The overwhelming tension in the air enveloped her, making her feel as if she would fall down like a giant boulder at any moment. However, in this dangerous moment, everything suddenly turned dark. Lucia jumped. "Why did the lights go out?" Lucia looked around with her eyes wide open. "Dylan? Can you see me?" Dylan asked in the dark. Lucia's eyes had to adapt to the darkness before she could see Dylan's outline and his obscured facial features. They were deep and hard to distinguish from the darkness. Meanwhile, Dylan's eyes were already adjusted, and he could see everything. "I see you. Anyways, it's time to go to sleep." Before Lucia could finish her sentence, she saw a yellow glowing speck slowly appear from the darkness. Slowly, more and more glowing specks appeared. It was breathtaking. Lucia stared at the miraculous lights in astonishment, her eyes unblinking. "What is this?" Lucia asked in surprise. "Fireflies," Dylan answered. "Fireflies? Dylan, do you think that I'm dumb? There aren't any fireflies here," Lucia said in disbelief. "But what else would be emitting this light?" "I had them brought here for you. Do you like it?" Dylan whispered. Lucia was so surprised that she was at a loss for words. She remembered Dylan had gotten out of the hot springs to make a call, but she had never expected that he had gone to order fireflies. The fireflies danced around her overhead. Lucia had never seen a firefly before. She had only seen them on television or in videos. She was almost more shocked by Dylan's thoughtfulness. Dylan's features became more and more clear in her eyes. Lucia's heart was pounding. "Dylan." Lucia looked up at him with longing in her eyes. Dylan put his arm around her. "What's the problem?" he asked. "We're on a mountain," Lucia said. "As long as there is love in the heart, it doesn't matter where we are," Dylan said hoarsely as he leaned down to kiss Lucia and leaned her back on the quilt. This wasn't the plan. Lucia had gotten Dylan to promise to give her a break, but she couldn't control her body. She couldn't stop. The next morning, after waking up, Dylan got dressed and then helped Lucia. After dressing her, he carried her to the helicopter. She was barely awake. Lucia slept all the way to the hotel that Dylan had made reservations at. Dylan carried her to the presidential suite, and not long after they settled in, lunch arrived. Lucia opened her eyes and looked at Dylan, who was standing by the bed. "Of course you wake up the moment you smell food," Dylan laughed. Lucia pouted, refusing to admit it. "I obviously woke up from the aching. Sleeping in the mountains may not have been the best idea." Thinking about the tent finally made Lucia look at her surroundings. "Hey, this isn't the tent. Where are we?" Lucia asked slowly. "A hotel suite," Dylan said, as he turned around to serve her some food. After he brought it over, he held a forkful of pasta out to Lucia. "Don't feed me. I can eat myself. Go eat your own food," Lucia said. "No need to be shy. I was very happy last night," Dylan said with a mischievous smile. Lucia's face turned red. Can you not say that in broad daylight? Why are you so shy? You are my wife. We can talk about sex. Lucia was speechless. Embarrassed, Lucia bit down on the food in front of her. The two of them ate and only returned to the mansion in the evening. Lucia was disappointed in herself. Really, a few fireflies had made her libido dance. Truly useless. Lucia was so tired that she fell asleep in the car. The next day, Lucia wanted to go to the office, but Cole was still ignoring her, which made her days very boring. Lucia still went to the office even though Cole was still mad at her. After all, she had hoped that she could stay in the office for a while longer and avoid Dalen. Then maybe Cole would soften his heart and speak to her. However, Cole ignored her all morning except for his usual routine. Lucia was depressed. Since she couldn't stay in the office any longer, she went over to Mark's office, but he wasn't there. Just as she was about to return to the office, her phone rang. Lucia took it out and looked at the caller. Her hand trembled in fright, and her phone almost fell to the ground. It was Jeff. When she answered, she cursed out loud. How dare you call me? Do you know how much trouble you've caused me? Cole is still ignoring me. I wish you would die. Are you done talking? Jeff's low voice sounded. No, let me tell you, Jeff, I have never seen such a vile man as you. What have I ever done to you? I despise you. Lucia roared. Jeff held his phone away from his ear while Lucia yelled at him. The expression on his face was extremely terrifying, but his voice didn't seem to change. I can help you with something. What kind of help? Lucia asked. I'll get Cole to forgive you. Really? Why would you do that? Lucia said doubtfully. I'm downstairs in your office building. I don't know where your office is, so come here and bring me up. I'll explain it to him myself. Why should I bring you myself? I'll have my secretary bring you. No. I'll give you 3 minutes and I have no patience for games. Just as Lucia was about to say something, Jeff hung up. Lucia was exasperated. There was something about him that always intimidated Lucia. Why would Jeff come just to put on a show for Cole? However, when Lucia thought of what Jeff said, she hesitated. Would Jeff really help her fix her friendship with Cole? But why did Jeff want her to come down alone? Lucia thought about it for a while and decided she was not afraid of him. What's more, if Jeff did anything to her, she would just knock him out. Lucia went downstairs. She saw Jeff's car, but she didn't go over. Instead, she headed for the other side of the road. Jeff, who was in the car, saw Lucia's actions and called her. When she answered, he said, Come to my car. No, come to the coffee shop across the way. I'll sit here and wait for you. Jeff sneered. You want to play games with me? 3 minutes have passed. I'm leaving. He threw his phone to the side and ordered the driver. Let's go. Lucia, who was sitting at the coffee shop, felt depressed. Jeff wasn't bluffing. He really left. That man was truly despicable. Lucia felt that there was someone standing beside the table, so she turned her head and saw... Oh my God! Lucia gasped. She leaned against the back of the chair, almost falling to the floor. She stared at the girl at her table in shock. She was dressed in dirty clothes, and her face was pale and shallow. There were also various kinds of spots on her face, and her hair was a messy mass on her head. Can I sit across from you? The girl asked. But, sure. Lucia didn't know why she said it was okay. This girl was disturbing. The girl sat down on the opposite side and smiled at Lucia, saying, "Thank you," and revealing a black tooth. Lucia told herself over and over again that she mustn't judge a person by their appearance. "Hello, my name is Maddie Smith," the girl said. "Is that your real name?" Lucia asked. She was very suspicious of this girl. "It's my real name. My mom gave it to me. Isn't it nice?" The girl's voice was sickeningly sweet. "Sounds good," Lucia said. She searched her mind for something else to say. "I'll help you deal with Jeff. Are you willing to tell me your name?" Maddie asked. Lucia thought for a moment and finally shrugged. "Lucia." Maddie laughed, her black teeth showing. Lucia was extremely disturbed. How on earth did this girl get in this state? Then she calmed herself down and asked, "You have a grudge with Jeff?" "I have a huge grudge," Maddie said firmly. "Then how do you want to help me?" Lucia asked. Maddie stood up and went up to Lucia, whispering in her ear. Lucia felt that even though she was extremely ugly, she had very bright eyes, like the stars in the night sky. However, when Maddie revealed her plan for revenge, Lucia was shocked. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure." "Don't you think you're at a disadvantage?" Lucia wasn't sure about her plan. "Jeff's only weakness is his obsession with cleanliness." Lucia had never realized this about Jeff. At noon, Dalen came to meet Lucia for lunch. Lucia tried to hide the thoughts racing through her mind with her lively eyes while they were at the dining table. Could Dalen tell that she had revenge on her mind? She couldn't let Dalen know about using him as bait. "What's on your mind?" Dalen asked. "What?" Lucia, who was in a daze, raised her head and met Dalen's sharp gaze. "What are you thinking about? Before you deny it, think about whether you can escape my eyes," Dalen warned. Lucia cleared her throat. "I had a very interesting encounter today. Well, Jeff called me in the morning." Hearing that, Dalen's expression turned dark and the entire room turned cold. "Listen to me first," Lucia quickly said. "If I hadn't asked, would you have told me?" Dalen asked. No, I was just thinking about how to explain it to you." After Lucia finished explaining, she was afraid that Dalen would go crazy again, so she hurriedly continued. "He asked me to bring him to the office to talk to Cole, so I went downstairs and asked him to meet me at the coffee shop instead, but he refused and left. Then a very strange girl found me. She said she could help me deal with Jeff. Dalen, do you know how that girl intends to take revenge? She wants me to help her drug Jeff, and then she's going to sleep with him."